Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle. Be your host one more time, right? Please hit our subscribe button, hit the notification bell to see when the upcoming episodes or any other content we have is. Leave a comment if you want to leave a comment. Go to the About section. Check out the Legend of the Superstition Mountains and Dutch Hunter Rendezvous shirts in black, gray, long sleeve, short sleeve. Getting through all that, thanks everybody for another year. Another year we've made it to the end, and I hope everybody's having good holidays. This today is going to be a topic that I was hesitant and I kind of mulled it about, and like I've always said, once something keeps researching or I'm being asked multiple questions about, I tend to want to say, okay, I'll just kind of get that out of the way, and I wanted to. And part of it was the inquiries that were happening. I was receiving inquiries via text messages and telephone calls, and some of it was from media or social media places that were looking for a quote or something, or if I had any stories or anything I had to give to that. So I'm sure you're all interested, because what could this be about? And it's about, there was recently a shooting, an accidental shooting on a movie set, the filming of a production called Rust. I guess it was a feature film. And supposedly there was a firearm on set. And the firearm from the armor was given, I think, the second assistant director or the second director, and he handed it to the actor, and the actor had the gun and supposedly fanned the trigger, but never, or fanned the hammer, but never touched the trigger, supposedly, and the firearm went off, and someone was killed and another individual were injured on it. But what was probably even the worst part of it all is that supposedly there were dummy, blank, and live rounds on the set. And so the context in that, because the context is, a lot of people realize, well, we worked on a program where there were live rounds, obviously. If you remember, in a couple different parts of our 6 episodes from Legends, the firearms used, Frank actually killed 2 different snakes with live rounds. And this was snake shot. There was a couple more off camera where firearms were fired. So we did have live rounds and so forth, and the inquiry was about the safety measures, the protocol, and so forth on the set. Did we deal with an armor and stuff? So at first I thought it was kind of odd that anybody would contact me, and then I realized, well, that's because people recognize that we did fire firearms. Was it dummy blank rounds and so forth and whatnot, what went on? So I understood this because people were trying to gain an understanding of, does this sort of thing happen? And it's happened obviously in films, very, very rare. So from our experience of what we used on the set, primarily it was Frank and myself had live firearms. They were our own personal firearms. They were live loads. There were no blanks or dummy rounds ever carried on the set. Frank and I maintained our own and had possession at all times of our own firearms. The only other person I know that carried a firearm, and you would have seen in the program, was Bob Shoes. Bob also carried his firearm. So, and these were all set and everything was there to go. And it's kind of interesting because I think one of the puzzling things is there's a lot of people that are unfamiliar with firearms, and this is not meant to be ideologically regardless of how you feel. Here the laws are very different in the state of Arizona, and you can actively carry a firearm, and there's no any special treatment, other than basically common sense. Now, growing up around that my whole life, there is that common sense attitude, and definitely, and understand, we go through safety protocols even here, but I carried a revolver on the set. The revolver I carried generally on the set there was, that you saw, was a Ruger 22 that had snake shot, and that was primarily for the snakes. Now the 30-30 did not have snake shot, that had 30-30 rounds. So when you saw me chamber around or doing anything with the weapon, those were live rounds and all that. This is a 357 Blackhawk. As you can tell, and it's not loaded. One of the first things you do anytime you're working with a weapon is you want to know if it's loaded or not. And prior to filming this, the first thing I did was not only to check to see if there were any rounds in the chambers in here, but I also disassembled it, checked the cylinder, and then checked the barrel to make sure there was nothing there. There's no way this should accidentally fire now. But that's one of the principles as you would be, and as you notice right now, I am not pointing this directly at the camera or anywhere in that direction because there are actually people there. And that is just one of the definite no-nos regardless, even if you have a live weapon. To fire a weapon like this, you have to have it fully cocked and pull the trigger. I'm not going to dry fire my own weapon here. But when we worked on almost everything I've worked on film, I've carried a live firearm. This for History Channel, Travel Channel, or Science Channel. In each instance they filmed because the Hollywood guys, because of the lack of knowledge of firearms and the use of them, they get fascinated by them very quick. I do know on Unexplained and Unexplored, we did a lot of scenes of sequences. They wanted to have me reload my gun and so forth. And so I did not know why, but that's what I did. And it was this one here. They loved the spinning the chamber thing. I guess it's an Old West thing. But so it was featured there and in Beyond Oak Island. And Beyond Oak Island, though it did not make any sequences and any of the live action stuff that I did, what did happen was it created almost like a carnival atmosphere because everybody that worked in production really had never touched a firearm. They were just absolutely like, oh my God, you know, can I touch it? Can I see it? So I made sure the firearm was unloaded and kind of walked them through because they all wanted to get pictures holding this particular revolver here. So I understand people become entranced, but then you hope each time you're speaking with someone, you're trying to educate them a little, as you know, making sure that they watch what you do, that you're checking the cylinder, and you're making sure that the firearm is not loaded, and they see what you do and how you're disassembling it, and they understand this very well. But again, I had live rounds. Frank fired live rounds, and in fact, probably around, and I'm going to set this up and put that back in the holster, but probably around the filming of episode 7 or 8, we had a day where they wanted me to go out with Jack San Felice. And that was where the petroglyphs of the ladder thing with him and Magnuson. And I had been working on every single day of filming from sunup to sundown and beyond sometimes, and working with the production group. And I had an opportunity there towards the end. I was feeling pretty burned out. It was kind of an open thing. Do you want to go out with Jack or something, or do you want one of the other guys? And I was like, does anybody else want to? Magnuson said he'd like to. So I said, why doesn't Magnuson get some camera time? And we let Magnuson go out with Jack. In doing so, Frank, myself, Woody, Deleel, and I think it was Dan Carter, our prop guy, and some of us from the crew, we'll go out and wait for you guys down at the lower claim till you show up. So we had a great time there. We panned for gold and stuff, but one of the things we did was we took some of the crew out there, and we went out, and because the film company, the production company, actually paid for ammunition, believe it or not, I had all these rounds, so we just pulled my truck up, we flipped down the tailgate, laid out the firearms, and Frank and I walked through everything with everyone, and we did target practice. It was kind of make people familiar with them, get some of that fear instinct, but make sure they properly handle them. And we had a great time. No incidents, zero. Now again, this is not probably the same size as a film set, but there were 20 to 30 active production people at all times, the cast talent and people around. And we're talking multiple live firearms at all times. I had 3. I had the revolver with snake shot, I had my 30-30, and then usually I was carrying my 9mm with me as well. Frank, I know, was actively usually carrying a shotgun and a handgun or more. So, and then like I said earlier, Bob Schuss carried his firearm when he was filming with us. So you have all this active live round. There's nobody checking, but we were checking ourselves, but there's no mistakes. There's nothing happens. Frank, the one time, it was when the crew stepped on the rattlesnake and they were suddenly in the midst of the snake. Frank killed that snake. I know the second one was the Mojave down around Black Cross Butte. There was a third one in the area of Hewitt Canyon, we came upon, I think that one got away from Frank. Snake shot doesn't mean it's always going to get the snake. But it was right in front of us. It was no more than 2.5 feet in front of me. It was back in some tall grass and was coiled up. And I think I have a couple pictures, but you can barely see it in the grass. I caught it, had to tell Frank to back up behind me. He saw it, and then he fired from beside me. I didn't even move because I was so close to the snake and he was rattling. But we almost walked right into him. So, but in those instances, those cases, the firearms were there, and one of the reasons we had them with snake shot in the firearms, and Frank and I would be either both of us towards the lead of the line, or one of us up front, and then maybe Frank trailing back further, was because of that, in case it was necessary. Which unfortunately, while I do not condone and wish to any harm upon any snake, rattlesnake especially, but any snake at all, it was something that was a necessary thing we had to do a couple times, and I think I've talked about that. But firearm safety in those aspects, and like I said, beyond Oak Island, unexplained, explored, at no time have I ever seen anything accidental. There was never an accidental discharge from the firearms. We were always going through, and one of the things, definitely protocol for myself, I can't speak for Frank, but I think it would be pretty clear, is each day we finished filming, I broke down my firearms and I cleaned them and made sure everything was oiled and everything was fine, checked my ammunition and so forth. But that always makes me curious in looking at this, is when people say, well, but this happened, and they try to make it about the politics. It's not about the politics. Politics should be completely removed. It's not about a person's ideology on it. It was that there was somehow a live round in that given situation, and that someone obviously who's very unfamiliar with firearms was allowed to use a firearm, and there should have been some training with that individual before that. Again, like I said, filming here, at no time was that firearm pointed anywhere in the general direction of cameramen or anybody here with me. That's number one, even though I know this firearm's unloaded. Even if I knew it was unloaded or had a dummy round or a blank or anything in such a way, I'm still going to treat it as a loaded weapon right now and at all times. I think that was probably the biggest problem of what happened. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't understand is that it was an accident. It was something that the firearm did not kill the person. It was the person that pulled the trigger. Someone pulled the trigger and it was an accident. That person has to live with that the rest of their life. That someone died, that someone was seriously injured because of just something that shouldn't have happened. All it would have taken was just to basically go back, roll that cylinder, see there's a round, take that round out, check it, and then not point it at someone. It's very, very simple. So that's more of just, it's an accident that should never happen. And yet they do. And I think it's a bad thing that it happened, but it allows us maybe to speak out and for people to always remember that you got to always stay on point with this when someone has a firearm around you. If you feel someone has a firearm and they're unsafe, don't be around that person. If you don't think that person has good judgment, if they're waving around, if they think they're cool or something, doing something stupid with it, talk to them and explain to them, because at no time that, number one, accidental shootings is just because someone didn't realize there was a round or they got their hand on the trigger or something wrong. So like I said, obviously we'll film this. I did Legends. I've done films. I've done television. Never had a mishap. No one's ever been injured. I don't think Frank's had any incidents or anything such like that. We were very safe. But the protocol, again, was our own personal protocol and making sure that we took care of our own firearms. The production company, A&E, History Channel, none of them ever dictated or asked for anything. So when people are pointing at the production company or different people, I also point out, you know what, but we were there with live rounds and live guns, and no one ever gave us anything to sign. There was never a release or anything. Deleel and Magnuson, Frank and I told them they were not allowed to have firearms. It was kind of funny. But again, there was no protocol that we were given. In fact, the only time we got anything you would say is protocol was early on in the filming stages in July. We went out to Ben Avery firing range, and part of that was we were going through and doing some kind of B-roll filming of us out there, like preparation stuff. And I know Mike McChesney was with me that day and all. We fired my 30-30 and my 9mm and stuff. and we went out and just fought. And that, again, it was kind of fun. The marshal on this at Ben Avery was there, and he kind of read us, the rules and everything and what to do. And I kind of at the end, after they had done all their filming, I went out and loaded everything and loaded multiple clips, and then I just went out and started just banging off rounds, just having a good time. Someone else paid for the ammunition. But again, like I'd like to point out, the principle is that we did do that, and a lot of people have called and talked to me, and I don't think I was very quotable because I didn't think it was about politics. I didn't think it was about anything. So it was about a safety issue, and the safety issue kind of holds to each person. And I know there'll be different people think different things in the comments, but each person that handles that firearm and passes to the next person, it has a responsibility to that firearm. And I don't recall from maybe this is why nobody really thought my quotes were that great, is I never had an armorer. I never had anyone hand me a weapon or say, ask about a firearm or anything about the firearm. It was in my personal possession at all times. The only time anyone else handled it is when someone would ask. I would unload, I would go through, make sure everything was clear, and usually I would show them that, hey, look, see, it's clear. Okay, please keep your finger off the trigger at that point and stuff, and don't point it directly at anybody. And everyone listened, and everything was fine, which makes me feel very kind of odd that I was more knowledgeable than the professionals on a movie set, but there you go. So I hope everybody kind of enjoys this, because it wasn't meant to be a tutorial. It wasn't meant to be in any way ideologically, politically leaning in any way. Obviously, there is no pro-con firearm situation here. This is just about safety. And I have family members that do not believe in having firearms, and that's perfectly fine. And I'm okay with that. I understand different people are allowed to feel the way they do. I believe all people should have some knowledge and safety and understanding. And if they make you feel uncomfortable, the people that like to avoid someone or say, I don't really want to be at their house or be around them because of that, that's a safe judgment call, and I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. I think it's a good way of, you need to understand that other person is they just don't feel uncomfortable in this kind of situation. What happened is a perfect example. I'm not going to go through the mechanics, but basically to say, if you have a firearm and you've checked it properly, and unless you've, on any revolver, unless you've touched that trigger, that gun is not going off. So again, it's the person with the weapon or the firearm that's going to cause the action. The action of the firearm firing is from the person that holds it. And again, I feel nothing but I feel kind of sad for the situation of all the people involved, because everyone involved in that has to carry that, and that has to be just an awful thing to go through. I know I would just be devastated because I didn't do things the way I should do. Why was I in a hurry or something like that, which I hope I never am. I never intend to be. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. It's not too dramatic for the holiday season, but it was something kind of out there. And like I said, as I was getting the messages and the emails and stuff, and people wanting to say, hey, can we quote you on this and that? And you don't know where this stuff goes to. And I think generally, because I'm very apolitical about it, I don't think it fit their needs or their necessities. So I think they were disappointed there was no armors. They were disappointed I don't have some sort of going to start talking about the amendments or something. So people generally just decided they didn't need me because it just doesn't create any controversy or anything. But I think that's what you need. I think you need in a situation like this is to make everyone comfortable and understand this situation and kind of just feel like it's heartbreaking when something like that happens. That being said, here we come down towards the end of the year, and I know we got one more episode before we'll be into 2022, believe it or not. And with that coming and all, though, I want to wish everybody this week a Merry Christmas. Now, you can have Happy Holidays and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and whatever else you want, but still have a Merry Christmas. I mean, it doesn't take anything out of you or suck you dry or anything like that. It doesn't really matter. Just enjoy yourself over the holiday season. And we can't wait to see you again, so take care. Be safe at all given times, and we'll have something special for you, actually before Christmas possibly, but definitely going into the new year. So thank you everybody for watching. As always, I'm Wayne Tuttle. You're not. And this was Chasing Legends.